Outside the capital Phoenix, in Charlie Kirk's adopted state of Arizona, tens of thousands of mourners queued for hours for his memorial service at the State Farm Stadium.
It's already bigger than MLK, it's already bigger than JFK. I think this is truly a turning point for America. This is a really big deal.
I feel energized more than ever in my life. I feel like I can take on the whole world after being here today.
Inside the stadium, the atmosphere was part raucous political rally, part megachurch service, with music beforehand from Christian bands who prompted sing-alongs and prayers from the crowd of almost 100,000. Speakers from Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, stressed the need to continue the 31-year-old's youth activism and emphasized his deep faith throughout the 5-hour service.
We are all Charlie.
Listening on, high-profile MAGA figures, senior members of the Trump administration, the vice president and the president all in attendance. Stephen Miller, the hardline White House deputy chief of staff, said Charlie's death would further revitalize the conservative movement in America.
The day that Charlie died, the angels wept, but those tears have been turned into fire in our hearts. And that fire burns with a righteous fury that our enemies cannot comprehend or understand.
Vice President J.D. Vance claimed Kirk's killing had brought him closer to his own faith.
You know, I was telling somebody backstage that I always felt a little uncomfortable talking about my faith in public as much as I loved the Lord and as much as it was an important part of my life. I have talked more about Jesus Christ in the past 2 weeks than I have my entire time in public life.
Then it was the turn of Kirk's wife, Erica, who fought through tears to deliver a message of forgiveness.
After Charlie's assassination, we didn't see violence. We didn't see rioting. Instead, we saw what my husband always prayed he would see in this country. We saw revival. My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. That young man. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
But watching on with Elon Musk, Donald Trump contradicted her message of unity.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Trump also touched on the fallout, claiming some on the left had celebrated Kirk's shooting.
Some of the very people who call you a hater for using the wrong pronoun were filled with glee at the killing of a father with 2 beautiful young children. And the same commentators who this week are screaming fascism over a canceled late-night TV show where the anchor had no talent and no ratings, last week were implying that Charlie Kirk deserved what happened to him.
After his address, Trump hugged Erica Kirk on stage. She has now taken over Turning Point USA, vowing to carry on its work on college campuses. Charlie Kirk will posthumously receive America's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But his killing has sparked fierce debate over the limits of free speech in America and laid bare once again its extreme political divisions.
Well, joining us now is Kristen Wolfe, former chair of Democrats Abroad here in the UK. Kristen, thank you for speaking to us. Firstly, what was your reaction to some of the political statements being made at Charlie Kirk's memorial service?
Well, first, let me begin by just saying, I extend my heartfelt sympathy to the Kirk family. What they have endured over the last several days, I'm sure, has been beyond words in terms of their pain. And like all political leaders, we have to condemn this kind of violence. In terms of what we heard at that rally, I think we heard a lot of voices coming together and expressing their view that this was a time for all of us to take a step back and look at our political rhetoric and how the political rhetoric can be divisive. I certainly believe that we are at an inflection point in our nation when we have to be careful about the words that we use to talk about the other side, and using words that divide us is not going to help us solve any of our problems. And certainly it can only have the intended effect of potentially leading us down a path of division and ultimately political violence, which has no place in our society.
Breaking somewhat with the sentiment of the event, Donald Trump said that he hated his opponents. Does that language concern you?
It does. I think the language is inflammatory, and it only serves to further divide us at a time when we need all of our leaders to take a stand and try and unite us around where we do have common ground as opposed to where we have disagreements. And I think the president once again failed us with his leadership and in this very pivotal moment in our politics.
And Trump also claimed the left had been celebrating Kirk's death since he was shot and commented on Jimmy Kimmel's suspension. How delicate a time is this in the US?
It's an extremely delicate time, and I can assure you that political leaders, certainly on the Democratic Party side, have been condemning this act of violence, because let's not forget that this violence is just an extension of the violence that has actually been happening in our country for decades. In fact, the National Institute of Justice has a report that states that since 1990, we've had almost 600 people be the victims of political violence. And many of those instances were the direct result of people on the right. But regardless of whether it's on the right or the left, it is all one too many acts of violence in this political realm, and we need to bring down that tension. So our Democratic leaders have come out strongly to condemn this.
It's undeniable that Charlie Kirk was very effective at getting young people into the conservative movement. How concerning is it that the Democrats don't have a rival organization as effective as Turning Point USA?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. We have many liberal voices out speaking, and in fact, you'll see them, out protesting all across the country. We just may not have we don't necessarily rally around a single voice. We have many voices. And again, what we are seeing all across the country are young people speaking up. In fact, those many people who followed Charlie Kirk did not agree with his positions on the substance of the issues that he was talking about, but they were there to debate. And that, I think, is a credit to Charlie to holding those debates. But I think that the step for us going forward is for us to try and find ways in which we can protest, petition our government, speak up. But it doesn't take one individual to do it. It takes all of us to do that if we're going to actually have an impact. And we need people to right now, stand up and have their voices be counted, whether that's, again, attending a protest, petitioning their government, or speaking out, on a college campus with the purpose of trying to find common ground, not necessarily to sow division.
Has there been complacency, though, on the part of Democrats and the Harris campaign last year, for instance, that young people who had naturally over time drifted towards them aren't to be taken for granted anymore?
We never took a single vote for granted. And I can say with absolute certainty that Kamala Harris, in the 107 days that she had to campaign, worked very hard to appeal to a wide cross-section of Americans who have a fundamental belief in not only the rule of law, but the deep understanding of the challenges that everyday Americans were facing in the economy, in the workplace, all across the nation on a wide range of issues. So We have not lost touch with our voters. We lost that election by a very slim margin. And I think that oftentimes it's easy to forget that, this election was one of the closest in modern history in the United States. But the impact that we're feeling from the loss has been tremendous. And that's why our organization is so motivated to win back first the Congress, and then we'll work our way back into the White House. But we are working around the clock, not only to stop some of the things that this Trump administration is doing, the chaos, the division, and the corruption, but we are also working very hard to bring people back into our party and to make sure that they understand what is at stake and how the Democratic Party is going to be the one who's actually going to help them and their families get ahead for the future. And we're not the party of billionaires. We're not the party that seeks to divide. We are the party that seeks to unite and to help everyday Americans so that they and their families can live the American dream.
And finally, is there anything that can be done to tone down the rhetoric in the US and prevent more political violence?
The political violence in our country has got to stop, and we've got to start having leaders stand up and first and foremost condemn the violence, but then also seek to find areas of common understanding. We need to stop labeling different groups. We need to stop the name calling, and we need to actually remember what it means to be American. And I think when we do that, that's when we will begin to see progress on this. Politics wasn't always toxic in the United States. It's been toxic for about the last 10, 15 years. And, just as it got toxic, we as leaders have the opportunity to bring a different tone and to bring a different conversation to our voters. It takes each and every one of us to do that, whether we're doing it, on the bully pulpit or whether we're doing it around the kitchen table.
Kirsten Wolf, former chair of Democrats abroad here in the UK, thank you very much.
Thank you.